Hi everyone, welcome back to my lab and today's video in which I wanted to share with you my first experience purchasing from two newer indie brands. So I have Blend Bunny Cosmetics. I purchased their Surge palette, and Playing in Makeup by Yolondo, or PIMBY, I purchased their Paint Me Chrome palette. I used both palettes to create today's look to get an idea of how the formula performs. I've been hearing a lot about Playing in Makeup by Yolondo in terms of their matte shadows, but this is their most recent release and I wanted to pick it up because it's an all shimmer palette. I've also been hearing a lot of really positive things about the Blend Bunny matte formula in specific, and I thought they would make the perfect pairing. I'll show you swatches, of course, and tell you a little bit about my purchasing experience from both of the brands. But before we get into the video, if you're new here, I'm Jody. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. I hope you're going to enjoy this one, and if so, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up while you're watching, and consider subscribing to my channel if you enjoy very low-key makeup content. I'll be leaving timestamps down below, so feel free to skip around to the parts that most interest you. Now let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about Blend Bunny Cosmetics first. I do realize that they recently launched a brand new palette. What is it called? The Unveiled? Let me check. The Dollhouse. Where did I get Unveiled? It's called the Dollhouse palette. It's a very beautiful, more neutral palette leaning towards rosy tones. But you know, I have been watching so many year-end favorite videos, which, by the way, let me know if you would like to see one of those from me. I know it's a little bit late, but it's never really too late to share really great beauty products. In any case, they just launched the Dollhouse palette, but it's more mauve-y neutral tones, and this one really interested me a lot because I saw it show up on so many people's year-end favorites. I was very curious, and I thought that this color story was a little bit more up my speed. I believe this is the second palette in their collection. It's called the Surge palette. It's got 30 shades. Each shade is 1 gram. You have a 12-month shelf life. It is made in China, vegan and cruelty-free. So here's the front of the palette. It has kind of like a brick wall, exposed brick with a bunny, and then Surge. I always thought the name Blend Bunny was a little bit funny every time I heard about it, but in this video, I see how they got their name for sure. On the back side, you have a color-coded guide with shade names of the palette and ingredients and information. Here's the palette itself. It's quite thin, which I appreciate. It's a good size for 30 eyeshadow shades. And when you open it up, there is no mirror in the palette itself. It's just that kind of exposed brick wall motif repeated in the interior, but here's the palette itself, and it is so beautiful. I don't want to call it a rainbow palette because I feel that that's doing it a disservice. In my opinion, rainbow palettes are just every color that are kind of thoughtlessly put together, but these were very, very meticulously selected. You can see that you have shade families in each individual column where if you're a beginner, if you stick to any column, there's no way you can mess up your look. Absolutely no way. I love that in the first 3 rows, they gave us gradients of the same tone. In the 4th row, they gave us some shimmers that are complementary to those tones, and in the end we even have some really bright fluorescent type shades. I think that it was just selected so well. When I swatched the palette, the shades felt, I don't want to say chalky because that's usually a negative connotation, but it's a little bit of a drier formula, not very powdery, but the minute I started swatching on my arm, it applied so smoothly and so creamy. I was really impressed. Even these lighter shades, they show up beautifully, and they're all pigmented. I really love the shade Chills. It's one of the ones that I'm featuring in my eye look today. The metallics are very beautiful, impactful metallic shadows. I would say very similar to like the Sydney Grace formula in terms of how impactful the metallics are, and of course I'll show you swatches of those as well. Was my first purchase from Blend Bunny. Like I mentioned, this palette retails for $43. It is still in stock in case you're interested. I found a discount code for 10%. It was the code MILLY, M-I-L-L-Y. Actually, I don't know who that is, but thank you to them for the use of the code because I saved a little bit of money. Shipping was $6, so in general, I paid $44.70 for the palette. And I think that that is a very, very fair price considering that you're talking about indie makeup. The only thing I have to mention is that they shipped the palette to me in a bubble mailer, and that always makes me nervous, I have to admit. I feel better receiving palettes in boxes. It was marked fragile and everything, but again, the bubble mailer made me really nervous. But as you can see, the palette was fine, so I can't really complain. It's just something I wanted to mention. Next, let's go ahead and talk about the PIMBY palette. So this specific palette is called the Paint Me Chrome palette. And from what I've heard about this brand, this is a more established brand, I believe based out of Georgia. And it is a Black-owned brand. Now, this palette is cruelty-free, has a 36-month shelf life. On the palette itself, I'm not seeing any information as to where the palette was made. The palette does come in this outer sleeve, very pretty packaging. On the back side, you have information about the ingredients, and there's really only one formula listed. So maybe the differences between one or another shade are just in the pigments. Their social media information is on the back side of the palette, and here's what the palette itself looks like. I like that the packaging is reflected on the palette itself. Same information on the back side of the palette, so if you wanted to toss this, you definitely could. I usually don't throw away my boxes for palettes. I don't know why that is. Now this one is an all shimmer palette. It is magnetized, it does have a mirror, and there are your shades. When I saw this teased, I kind of figured, oh, maybe it's like the Adept Cosmetics Plain Jane palette, because this one was supposed to be all duo or multichrome shadows, and here's what that one looks like. Now, one thing I noticed about this one was shipped in a box. I noticed that some of the pans are kind of loosely glued in. I tried to pop them out to see if they were magnetic, but they're not. I believe that they're just loosely glued in. I know that when I was swatching, some of them were moving around as well. There's no information about the amount of product that you're getting. It's possible all that information is on their website. So here are what the shades look like, and of course I will show you swatches of these as well. The swatches were really, really beautiful. I like that you have a variety of shades here. You do have some that are black-based metallics, so you want to be careful when you're blending those out. But I noticed right away when I was swatching them that they have a black base to them, like this blue one, the green one, and this one here. It left a little bit of black on my arm when I was wiping them away. Others are much more sheer shades, like the ones that you have over here. Like these first three, they're so pretty. They're the type of shades that you layer over other ones, and they just absolutely transform. Now, in terms of the multichrome or duochrome effect, I honestly didn't see too much of it. I am wearing this shade right here, this gold shade. They don't really have names, and I noticed that it has like a gold pink shift. But I have to say that from working with them, they're not like the multichromes that you have from Adept or the multichromes from Divina Cosmetics. And for lack of a better word, I want to call them a little bit more basic, but that doesn't mean that the shades themselves are not beautiful. Those swatches can't be denied. They're absolutely beautiful, and I was super excited to work with both palettes. Now, in terms of the price of that palette, it's really, really pricey. That one, it retails for $75. It is also still in stock. I found a code for this one as well. I was using code SAVE15, which I believe was from joining their mailing list. So I saved $11.25. Shipping was $8.99, tax, etc. Bottom line was $72.74, so roughly the $75 retail value of the palette itself. Now, I have to say this one launched December 25th. It sold out that same day, I believe, but they shipped it almost immediately. I have to give them a lot of credit for that because Pat McGrath launched the Bridgerton collection, which I did a video on that one. They launched it on December 26th and they didn't ship it out until like January 11th, maybe the 12th. If an indie brand could launch a palette on Christmas and fulfill it a few days later, I think Pat McGrath could do a little bit better. But you can go feel free to watch that video if you're interested in hearing more about that. But I just did want to give them a lot of credit in how fast they fulfilled these orders. So those are the basics on the palettes themselves. I'm going to go ahead and skip to the demo so that you can see how I created the eye look. If you're not interested in that, then feel free to skip ahead to my final thoughts. I'm going to be working with this palette for the shimmers, and I have to say from the swatches, I really, really want to use this little purple one, but I did like a bolder purple look a few days ago, and so maybe I want to work with the blues, but then I worked with the Pat McGrath palette, and so I made a blue look with that. So I think I'll just decide based on the matte colors and then see what's gonna go with it on the lid. So let's go into the Blend Bunny palette instead. Now with these, I of Of course, I love the greens. That goes without saying. The pinks were very nice. The purples were nice as well. But I think I want to work with these colors right here. I think that these are so pretty. The palette is set up quite nicely so that even a beginner, you know, you can work down these columns and make really pretty looks. But I want to work with those. They were really pretty smoky, cool tone blues. Let's see what happens. I'm going to take my Smith 230 and start with the shade Rush. I did also already prime. I used the Makeup by Mario primer palette, and I did set kind of above the crease with the powder. So I'm starting in with the shade Rush. It seems very soft, but also very easy to blend. Very easy to blend. You can see that I placed down the color, and with one dip, I was pretty much able to get my entire crease. You guys know I don't really have a crease. I'm going in a little bit more. It's already January 18th, and I wish I could say I hadn't bought anything, but yesterday I caved and I ordered a couple of things. I know I was talking to you all about my having canceled the BoxyCharm subscription box, and how one of the things that I appreciated about it was being able to shop the Boxy pop-ups, which they're calling drop shops now, or mega drop shop, something like that. I'm going to take a smaller brush. This one is the Koki 610, and I'm going to go into that shade Linger. This is the shade that I want to place in the outer corner. So yeah, like I was saying, I got an email yesterday from BoxyCharm. They opened up the drop shop to former subscribers. So I'm no longer an active subscriber, and yet I was able to browse the pop-up or the drop shop and pick out a few items, and I'm really excited about that. I mean, by the time that they allow non-members to shop, a lot of the products have already sold out, but there was still a pretty good selection, and I had a pretty good cart going, I'm not gonna lie, before I kind of, remembered my goals for this year, and I decided to just pick up a Vesca highlighter, which I had seen a lot on Jamie Page Beauty's channel, as well as Julia, what's her last name? Julia Adams? Yeah, I think that's her last name. But I had seen both of them share that highlighter. It's a powder highlighter on their channels very often, and I was always very curious. And so I went ahead and I picked it up. It was about, I think it was about $9, but then I did have to pay like a handling fee, and my total ended up being a little over $12. When I take into account my beauty budget, I am going to be counting tax and shipping and all of those things, because those are expenses that are coming along with my purchases. But yeah, I know some of you were asking me if the drop shop was going to open for me as a non-subscriber to let you know, and so that's what I'm doing. We're going to go into the shade Chills, and I'm going to use that to blend out the edges a little bit. This one seems a little bit more powdery, but I will admit I forgot to tap off my brush. I did forget to tap off my brush, but this one is such a pretty color. It's like a slate blue. I really love that color. I'm going to go back into that Rush shade and re-intensify kind of what I lost here. I'd heard great things about the Blend Bunny formula, and I know that they just came out with another palette, but that other palette is cool tone. It's a little bit more purpley in tone, and I could have purchased that one when it launched, but I actually decided that this one was a little bit more my cup of tea. This was an amazingly easy blend, and I'm working with super intense colors. I'm really impressed so far. We've got the other eye all caught up, and now we have to decide what to put on the lid. Oh my goodness. I mean, this shade is more of a black-based blue. I'm kind of tempted to take maybe a gold on the lid. Blue and gold look really nice. I wish I had kept my previous nails. They were blue and gold, and I really like the combination. I still really want to use that shade. It's swatched so beautifully. But I think I'm going to go ahead and stick with those two shades right there. I don't think the shades have names in the palette. Yeah, I'm going to use that one and that one. I'm trying to see what order to place them in. The one on my middle finger has a duochrome. It's like a pink gold shift. I think I'm going to put the true gold in the center and the peachy one on the inner corner. So I'm starting out with that gold shade, and I'm just packing it on. It's sticking on very nicely. So now I'm going to go into the shade that has more of the peachy gold. Those two are blending together really nicely. Very, very nicely. Now I'm going to take the brush, my initial blending brush, and I'm just going to kind of go back and forth here on the outer corner. See if I can blend the outer V into the gold shade. I think I want it to be a little bit deeper, so I'm taking the other brush. I'm not adding any product, I'm just using whatever was left on my brushes. I'm just going back and forth in the outer corner. I do want to see kind of what the effect would be if I go in with my finger. I'm just going to pack some of that on. Not surprising at all to see more of an impact with my finger. Now I'll see if I can replicate that on the other side. I think we're somewhat even. I also think we need a huge wing for this look. So I'm going to do wings, lashes, face makeup, and we'll come back to do the lower lash line. So here's where my makeup is so far. And you know, it would be really, really pretty to continue with the blues on the lower lash line. It would be very clean. But I'm really inspired by that peachy look on the inner corner that I kind of wanted to try some of these reds here. I don't know. I like this look so much so far that I really don't want to ruin it. So I'm going to go ahead and use the shades that I was using before. So I'm going to go ahead and use the shade Rush. And I'm going to brush that very lightly on the lower lash line. I do want to deepen the outer V with the shade Linger. Just going to take a teeny tiny brush. I think I'll just add some fun to the look with some eyeliner. I want to go ahead and use that lighter shade on the inner corner. I'm going to use the same brush. I just kind of wiped it off. As you can see, this color just kind of shifts. It has like multicolor shimmers, and I can tell right away that it's one of those like transformative shades that no matter what you put it on top of, it's gonna take on like a different personality. Because the look has a little bit of a greeny feel, I'm going to use the liner in the shade Ectoplasm. I'm going to apply that on the waterline. I like it. I'm going to even out both eyes, add lower lash line mascara, and I will be back to show you the finished look. This is your finished look. Hopefully you enjoyed seeing how I created it. I really enjoyed creating this one. The matte shadows in particular were so easy to work with. I was really impressed. Hope you enjoyed seeing how I created this look. I had a lot of fun creating it. I love the way that it turned out as well. I like that it's very bold, colorful, but still, in my opinion, wearable, even if it's a little bit smoky. So let's go ahead and talk about the Blend Bunny palette first. I get it now. I get why this was on everybody's favorites of last year, and I get why my feed is completely full of reviews for their newer palette. I am so impressed in the quality of these mattes. They swatch beautifully, they blend beautifully. If you're newer to makeup and you want to experiment with color, I think that this would be a very safe palette for you to invest in because it's laid out perfectly for you in columns. Like, you cannot possibly mess this up. And if you're a more seasoned makeup user, you can definitely mix and match and get a little bit more creative. I was so impressed with the pigmentation of those shades. Like, even the shade Chills, I mean, it was so beautiful when applied. It was so pigmented. I expected it to look ashy, to look faded. Pastel shades usually look like that on my light medium skin tone, but no. Not at all. I was so impressed with how the shades performed. Of course, I didn't use any of these shimmers on the lid, so I can only comment on the performance of the mattes for now, but wow. The palette is predominantly matte anyway, but if their other palettes are anything like this one, wow, I get it now. I really do. Even just on the first use, I'm really looking forward to using this one again. Very, very excited. If you were curious about this, I would definitely recommend it, even just on a first use. Very impressed. Now when it comes to the Paint Me Chrome palette, I did enjoy working with the palette as well. I only used 3 shades from this palette, so it's very difficult for me to comment on all of them. But I have to say that I did enjoy the quality of the shadows, and it's going to be a very beautiful pairing palette. I think that if you're looking for the ultimate in multi-chromes or duochrome eyeshadows, personally I don't feel that you're going to find it here. I think that this is something that the brand is just now getting into, and for the first release in that type of product, I think they did a beautiful job. The shades performed beautifully, the ones that I used, and the swatches were gorgeous as well. I know that the price was set based on the ingredients that went into this formula, but I do feel that the palette was just a little bit on the expensive side for what you're receiving, especially when I'm comparing it to things like my Adept Cosmetics eyeshadows, which I love absolutely so much, or for individual duochrome or multi-chrome shadows like those from Sydney Grace or Divina. Probably Cleona, but I don't have any of those, so I can't really speak to those right now. So it's a beautiful palette. I'm happy that I have it, but I don't think it's to the caliber of claiming a duo or multi-chrome palette. I think that this is just a really beautiful shimmer palette. Even though some have slight shifts, none of them are really, really drastic ones. In terms of the quality, it seems to be there for my opinion. In the construction of the palette, it does make me a little bit nervous to see that the pan is moving. If it pops out, which I actually tried to pull it out with tweezers and it wasn't going anywhere, so if it pops out, I'll just probably glue it back in. Based on my first purchasing experience from this brand, if I see another palette that really catches my eye, I would definitely be willing to give them another shot. Of the shades that I used, I have to say, like this shifty gold pink one was really pretty. That was a really beautiful duochrome. And then this lighter shade, which just looks white in the pan, it pulls a little bit gold green because of the combination of colors on my eyes, and I thought that that was something that's really, really pretty. Fun palette and fun color story. In terms of the pricing of the Blend Bunny cosmetics, I think that it was absolutely very fairly priced. Had it been priced higher, I would have paid that amount as well. I think it's very, very good quality. That's gonna be everything for this video. Let me know what you thought of the 2 palettes I showcased in this video. Let me know if you enjoy seeing palette pairings like this, especially when we have one palette that's all shimmers, pairing it with another palette, and if you enjoy seeing indie makeup palette reviews as well. If you've tried either of these brands, I would love to know what you've tried and what your favorites are and why that is. Like if you like the mattes for their blendability, the shimmers for the impactfulness, or whatever the case may be, I would be very curious in hearing about it, because I'm definitely open to investing a little bit more in the brands, and then if anyone else is reading the comment sections, then they can have your recommendations as well. Thank you for joining me for my first impressions on these brands. If you have any questions on anything I may have forgotten, just feel free to drop those in the comment section down below, and I'll do my very best to respond as best as I can. Thank you for joining me for another video. I hope you did enjoy it, and if so, don't forget that big thumbs up for me and subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to hit the bell so that you are notified every single time I upload a new video. Thanks again for spending a few minutes of your day with me. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon on my next one. Bye-bye.